Okay, so we're here in the project. We are going to edit a podcast. I'm just going to show you how to start up the project and get things rolling. Now, the exciting thing about doing podcasts, even though they're much longer than a normal video, is that they're really easy to do. So I'm not entirely sure how long this one's going to be, but we're here in the project. Files are already in it, and if you don't see your media pool, all you have to do is go over to the top left, click on media pool, and boom, here you go. We're going to click on master. First thing I want to do is open up our footage. Now you should see that every single one is relatively the same. I'm going to go ahead and drag that in there, and I'm on a trackpad today, so that's going to be fun. So I'm holding down Alt. I'm using 2 fingers on the trackpad to scroll up and down to shrink it. And let's see. We're going to type in camera, audio. Not saying that you have to do this. Footage. And it's all one camera, so that's always a plus. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to audio. Now, this is the audio that we recorded with the mixer. So I'm going to lift this up and give it some room, and you'll see that it's actually several tracks. When you hover over it, you'll see in this window that it's going to show multiple tracks. So what it does essentially is it literally records every single track that the audio has, but it becomes a really big benefit because it will separate our host, Will, his mic, and his guest as well. So as many guests as we have, you can have them separated, change volume levels, add on compression and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this in here, and we're going to go ahead and search through these files. So I know one thing we're going to want to do, you'll see that they're all completely attached. Let's go ahead and shrink these. Shrink them down so we can kind of see them. But all these ones that are empty, we definitely want to get rid of. And these 2 right here are just stereo versions. We don't want those. We have no need for them. So I'm going to go ahead and hold down Control Alt and hit LL. That will disconnect them all, make them individual. Up, and it didn't happen. All right, Control Alt L. That's what it was. Maybe. Yes. Okay. It was 1L. It took the L. I took the L. I don't know. All right, so I'm going to delete all of these tracks. I'm going to hit Control X, scroll back up, and I'm going to mute our camera audio. We literally only want the camera audio just as a source to connect the audio files. So actually, before we do that, let's go ahead and try to sync this up. Let's see. I'm going to hold down Alt, open it up. And what we'll do is I'm going to actually pull all of these out. And then I'm going to just highlight 2 of them at a time. I'm going to right click, or in my case, because I have my pad set up like a Mac, double click. And I am looking for, if it's not here, there's 2 ways to do it. Sometimes it pops up. I'm not entirely sure why it's not popping up. So I'm going to go ahead, maybe because this is already in order. So let's see. We'll try it again. I don't have my glasses on and I need them. Auto assign clips. Oh, here it is. Auto align clips. That's why I couldn't see it, because I don't have my glasses. Let me put those on. That's a good idea. All right, now I'm a real nerd. All right, so we're going to do auto align clips based on waveform, because we don't have time code, we have waveform. And it generally works pretty well as long as you have good audio from both sources. Let that do its thing. And it failed. Oh my gosh, no. Okay, so we're probably going to have to do this hard way now. We'll try the other one and see if that works. Auto align based on waveform. Please work. And it failed. Okay, maybe it's not the right audio. That's very highly possible.
25,000 square feet. So
we know that's Will. I recognize his voice, at least.
From 500 square feet.
So that's Will.
Yeah.
Second
worm.
That's a beautiful story, dude. I mean, like...
but what was funny, and I've never filled out
All right, so what we'll do is all we should have to do is align one of them, and then we can align this directly with the other one because they were recorded exactly the same time, and so the stopping point and starting point is exactly the same. So I'm going to go ahead and start here up the front, and let's see if we can find anything that is resemblance. Actually, let's use the other one just so we can get it close. All right, let's see. This is tough on a little screen. Normally I like to get really wide up here. We're going to try to make some room. And we're going to also shut these down so we have the room. Okay, let's see. We're just looking for a pattern. Maybe the end is a good way to view it. Okay, so I'm seeing this little pattern right here with this, and that's pretty solid indicator. Man, it looks like it almost matches identically, but I want to zoom in hardcore here, and I'm probably going to want to disconnect our magnet as well so that we can get it really on point. Okay, now I see this pattern here matches with this pattern. And you got to remember, this is both voices where this is only one, so we're trying to look for that dominant speaking voice, and that looks pretty solid. Can we zoom in anymore? We got to get it out of the way. Let's see. And another thing I do is I'll use this timeline thing to kind of help visually see. So we're on that second bar like that. Okay, I think we're good right there. I'm gonna put my magnet back on, and then I am just going to align this next row with, oh, I don't want to turn that up yet, with that. And now we can test it and see if the audio is aligned. You'll hear kind of like a double pattern in the voice.
The generation how we were raised was dad goes to work, he comes home later.
You know, parts of it, and it's just like, what? Like,
and I'm in here, this young kid, like, you know, I've met other people who are like, I hate my job, I'm quitting, okay, I'm going to go.
So that's good. We want to make sure that it does that across the board. And since we kind of synced it in the back end, we want to make sure it's still synced in the front, because sometimes if the code is a little, or if the timing is off a little bit because you're running it on two different systems, it can have a slight lag, which is kind of crazy thinking about it, but it does happen. And over a long period of time, it can cause it to really have a delay. So let's take a look.
Care less about what the product was. Everything was about data. So we could actually see, and then when it sold, that's when I got, during the fourth quarter, realized at that time, if I want to continue to make money.
And I'm so amazed at, you know, to be, so I rented that.
Okay, so you can hear that it is different over here. So it is slightly offish, but I think it can work. So we're gonna mute this, and then we're gonna pull this back down, and we're gonna take a look at his lips to the audio.
Buy something from Walmart, like kids' pajamas for $8, but on Amazon they were selling for over the years.
Looks good to me. Looks good to me. Okay, so now let's go ahead and we need space. All right, so we'll go ahead and let's go ahead and disconnect these. I probably just reconnected them like I did last time. I did. All right. And then I actually just want to disable it so we know that, hey, this is not the thing. Let's see if we can just do that. All right. Now we want to see how long it is. 33 minutes. Not too bad. It is one of his longer ones, but it's really not bad. Okay. So you'll see that the visuals obviously don't look good. But one of the good things that we do whenever we have a lot of consistency when it comes to doing a podcast, we're filming in the same room, we're setting up the lights almost exactly the same, at least we're trying to. That way we can have consistency, and so you don't actually have to do a color transform. We've already done it for you, so it's really nice. But we also want to make sure we're taking out these black lines, which are considered into our shot. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight our footage, and then I'm going to scroll down to retime scaling, and let's go to scaling and then fill, and that takes care of that. The next thing I want to look at is this curve on this line. So I'm going to zoom this in a little bit. You can see that there's a little bit of a stretch, and I just want to make sure that I'm giving like kind of this symmetrical look to the whole shot. And so it's very, very important very, very important that you do these things first, because if you don't, then it can cause a lot more work in the end. But if you take care of it first, then it's really set in stone, it's solid, and you're done. So I want to take care of this a little bit. And I'm saying that mainly because if you end up cutting some of the footage, like if there's a mess up, or when you add in the sponsor segment, which is separate, then you will have to like do it again and all that stuff. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go to lens correction, and yeah, you can analyze it. It didn't do anything, but I still see that warp a little bit. So I'm going to just slightly adjust it. And it really doesn't need much. I think right there looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit less because I'm seeing like on these ends that it's curving a little too much. And then I want to rotate it because it looks like, the thing is that the camera that we use always levels itself out. But what it doesn't do is level the room out. And so if the camera's level, but the room isn't, they're going to have a slight lean. And you can see that in the table just slightly. And, you know, we want to be excellent at everything that we do. So we're going to just slightly adjust this on our rotation axis or angle. And let's see. That's good. Oh no. Okay. So I think it was like I think it was at point -100. This is really hard to do on this trackpad. Please, dear God, help me. Okay, I got it. Wow, that's perfectionist. Isk. All right, I'm going to zoom in a little bit because it's a little bit not centered, and I don't like seeing that bottom of the table too much. So I'm going to zoom it in a little bit, and then I'm going to push him over and try to get, you know, him on this third as much as possible. And they're both kind of like lining up on that other axis. Audio.
You still do coaching?
I don't do the coaching anymore.
Okay. Let's see. Let's go back into our color. And let's go to LUTs. I think it's in LUTs. It's not in here. It's maybe in gallery. No, it's supposed to translate over. Here it is. Okay. I clicked on this little thingy here. And then we have our power grades. That's what we're looking for, is power grade. And it's this one. So all we have to do is grab this, drag it over, and bam, the power grade is done. And that is something that I think is really, really awesome about DaVinci, how they have it set up. And I will say, there does need to be potentially a slight adjustment for every single one. But when I mean slight adjustment, we're going to click on this wheel here, and we're literally just going to look into, how do I do this one here? I don't know how to zoom in. It's fine. It's fine. So we just want to do slight adjustment, like maybe take our shadows down a little bit, and we're gonna play with it a little bit. That's too contrasty, too bright. Maybe we can add that saturation, and you're going to want to go to the last node. That way it really affects everything, because there's a lot of stuff in this system that's like, you know, really kind of adding some dynamics in different areas. So we're just going to add a little bit here and there. Maybe raise these up a bit. We're going to go to our gamma. I feel like a lot of people forget about the gamma and how effective it really can be. Gamma is kind of like your mid area, which can be a really good source. So there's really not much that we need to do here. One of the things that you're wanting to look at is like, does it have good vibrant colors? Is it bright enough? Are we blowing out stuff like this? So like I raise the highlights here and it's kind of blowing it out. But it's okay to have some things blown out. You just don't want it too much. So I'm going to look at the white on these mugs and stuff like that. But I don't think there's any need to go in the negatives on this. So I'm just going to bring it up a little bit. Doesn't really need much adjustment. Like even the contrast, like I don't think I really even need to add contrast to it because we've kind of already done that through the system. So the point is to really just, go to the YouTube channel. We'll go do it right now. And we're going to type in Will Frederick. I think that's how you spell it. Hey, and he's got a podcast on YouTube. Go to videos, and we'll just take a look at it.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Will Frederick Podcast, where we're talking about real estate, wealth building, money, and life. We have been talking about a lot of...
Okay, and this will kind of give me a lead to the other thing as far as like when you're doing Will's videos, it is very important that you do a good pumped up intro. And so I'll just show you some examples. If you ever have any questions, go look up the client. That's always your best bet. Like, hey, what style is he? What kind of branding is he? What is his videos like? What works for him? So we can look at this one.
We had to go and replace bed, furniture, everything. We had some people staying in it. Seemed like it was really going well until my cleaning lady showed up. Literally called me and said, I don't even know the words to express of what I'm seeing. And as soon as she started FaceTiming, I was like, what in the world?
How many of you have stayed in an Airbnb and looked around and thought, I really wouldn't mind owning one of these? The industry seems to have taken off a lot in the last few years, and so I'm excited to dive in. We're going to talk about how you can own one of these one day and some of the pitfalls along the way and how you can get started. First, I would like to thank our title sponsor, First Access Mortgage. They are Louisiana's first choice mortgage lender for the last 21 years. We're excited to be partnered with them. If you need financing for a first home or refinance, go talk to them. They're truly a home loan resource. I also want to introduce a special guest, but first I want to talk about today's sponsor, Fleur de Lis Law and Title. They're the largest title company in the state. Investing in general.
Okay, so
people
I really
to
just
wealth.
kind of want to
So Dawn's been a great friend. She's also very
we'll have those
passionate about real estate
intros,
investing.
It works out,
This
and then I'll pause it. It'll work out, and then it goes into just normal podcast mode. I will say this looks really good. As far as color goes, we don't have some of the stuff there anymore, like this plant and all that. We need that back. Come on, Will. Let's get the plant back. We need some vegetation. 'Cause that's boring. It's boring, but it is what it is. But I'm really like I'm gonna go push for that. We're gonna start we're gonna do it for the cause. So go into Power Grades, set that up. Video's looking good. The next thing we can do is our audio, but we don't want to strain it too much. The good thing is that when you go into your Fairlight, you can easily set up. Oh my goodness, I just realized that I've never done this in this system before. So one of the things that we can do is we can raise the volume. Remember, you want the highest point to be at the max, like no higher. So that, and then this, and we really want to get them kind of matched up the same at that point. So I guess and this is really hard on the trackpad. We'll get it there. Let's see how it sounds.
Or mostly because I sold the company, we'll talk about that here a little bit.
Look at this.
But
He's kind of peeking a little bit. So
for like 3 or 4 years, I had a coaching program. I worked for another guy who also did it. My thing was called FBA Insiders. If you Google it, you might find something out there.
Right, maybe. Let's see whose voice this is.
So,
so this is Will. I think it's always good to have indicators, at least for the audio. And then, I don't remember this guy's name, so we're just going to do guest. Now we know.
I think you should buy this. And so I was
So one of the easy things about this, if I can figure out how to do it on this system, let's go to effects. That's not it. It might be over here. Let's see. Effects. No. There's normally a dynamic display. There it is. Okay, I got to scroll down. And I should be able to see the names. Okay, good. We named them. That's good. Got guest and Will. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to click this box over here. Let's see if we can get some space. All right. So I'm going to click on this, double click. And this is something that I do for every single one. It's really easy. You don't have to overthink it. I just go to dialogue compression. And I'm going to turn...
Actually pitching to Paul to buy this warehouse as the agent.
Then you want to take... and then you want to take your makeup and then try to get it around the -5.
25,000 square feet. So...
Yeah, and so for somebody who's never done a deal...
Okay, so it's doing it on there. It seems like it's working pretty decent. Let's go ahead and do this for our guest. Dialogue compression. I mean, if you know about audio, you can go ahead and mess with the threshold, the ratio, the knee, the attack, all that stuff. There's no point of really getting super heavy into it because we're not trying to make a movie. We're just trying to make a decent sounding podcast. I say decent, really like a good sounding podcast, but it doesn't take that much because it does sound good.
Effort to be like, I'm going to go buy this warehouse that sits on 4 acres you know, it's really not outfitted for what we were trying to do.
Right.
I mean, to get an 18-wheeler in there, it was a sewing factory previously, so it wasn't even built for 53-foot trailers. There was a lot of challenges, and then our lives became chaos.
Yeah.
So, but with this, it gave this nice little slow, and I think with entrepreneurship in general, any sort of buffer that you can make, that's like, I think when we bought it together, we said, okay, how long are we going to wait until we lease it, to figure something out.
How
long do you? I think that's
I want to make sure that they compare well
how long
to
can you
each
muscle
other.
that?
Yeah, and I think the way we got into it together is because you were kind of like, I don't know about this. Is like
so
crazy
nervous.
talk. Yeah, like I'm trying to convince you to buy this thing that's really probably 5 times the size of what you could dream to need.
Down just a little bit,
and so actually a lot more than that probably because you were going from 500 square feet.
We only used like 1,000 square feet.
Yeah. So you grew into 1,000 square feet, but you were kind of like, hey, I'm not sure I'm ready for this, but what if we bought it together and then we partnered
and that
together?
might need some more adjustment. Just going through it, and then you get like as you're editing, you can kind of make some small adjustments to it and be like, okay, that's good. But don't get too you want to make very small tweaks because audio should sound pretty good already. And then the next thing that we can do is we can add some EQ. Let's see. How does one get to EQ? Normally what I do is instead of doing EQ through there, I kind of do it through here because it's a really simple system. It's easy. It does do it to the actual file instead of the track. But I'm going to go ahead and...
In the prep business.
I'm just going to tweak little
and
things here.
Well, is that, am I remembering that correctly?
I'm going to turn on band 1. Band 4.
So one thing about Paul and I, neither one of us have very good memories. So we're gonna like fumble through this right here. Yeah.
Well,
you correct me and I'll correct you.
So the next thing that I want to do, so you want to add, if you're like, man, he sounds kind of muffled, I need some clarity, that's where you're going to add in the highs. And that's always going to be in this 4K, 1K to 4K range. Anytime you go a little past the 4K, you're getting into really kind of annoying sounds. The second thing that you want to do, if it sounds muddy, then you're going to want to cut out some of those mid sounds, which goes somewhere between this 250 to 1K sound profile. But obviously, with what we currently have on, is not going to work. So I'm going to go over here to band 2, and I'm just going to put this one for now. And I want to take my cue and shrink it. And I'm going to blast it. This is kind of a technique that I see a lot of people using. I have a lot of friends that are producers and they do a great job, but this is one that you can kind of do to just go ahead and listen to the sound. So
I have no clue.
My recollection is we bought the building.
But we need Will to talk.
Naturally.
Correct. Really, probably 5 times the size of what you could need to need, and so actually a lot more.
You're essentially looking for what sounds the most annoying.
Probably because you were going from 500 square feet. Yeah. So you grew into 1,000 square feet, but you were kind of like,
so,
hey,
I could take that. I can just go ahead and click on this dip. It doesn't give you as much control, but it could work. Listen.
I'm not sure I'm ready for this, but what if we bought it together and then we partnered together in the prep business? And I was
okay. that's working for me. And then now we'll go to our guest and we'll set it up.
There was tons of old office spaces. Eventually all that got ripped out because we needed more space and we grew. But what was nice about it is because of the price of the building, we could take.
Okay, so Will has kind of like a deeper voice. So I don't really need to boost that in his voice unless we're really trying to go for that radio sound. But in podcasts, yes, you can have that. I mean, I feel like Will's voice kind of moves towards that direction, but I want to take our guests and add a little bit more to his, so it doesn't sound tinny or flat. So I'm going to take this too, and I'm actually probably going to shift things over a little bit because we don't have to cut these ends off like that. He really doesn't need a lot of highs in there. So first we're just going to go ahead and listen a little bit to the bass area. So we're going to go ahead and switch. And we're going to take it around, like behind the 250. So let's go ahead and listen.
Growing. Versus, I've got other business partners where they sign a lease for 30,000 square feet. Well, they're on the hook for that lease, right? Like they have to make that work. And oftentimes it's, there's a chicken or the egg situation here. Do we get more space? And then
okay, we don't have to boost it that much. So if you're not familiar with audio stuff at all, you're taking frequencies. Frequencies are the different sound waves, whether it's the higher pitch or the lower pitch. And that's what these hertz represent. These are essentially just volume. So I'm taking something that's already there. I'm finding it through this EQ system, and I'm just turning the volume of that up so it's more emphasized. It's the same thing if you're adjusting the sound in your car. If you turn up bass, it's a very simplified process of, hey, I'm going to take this lower end frequencies and just turn that volume up. So that's the exact same thing we're doing. So another technique, like if you notice, I was turning it on and off.
We grow, or do we bust at the seams and then our lives are chaos. Yeah. So, but with this, it gave this nice little slow, and I think with entrepreneurship in general, any sort of.
So you could tell it adds like a nice rounder sound to it overall. And then
that you can make that's like, I think when we bought it together, we said,
and it just sounds good. It sounds natural. Okay. So now we're going to go to our bigger part. Let's go ahead and open up our media pool. And I want to show you a few things. So you'll make the intro. We have assets over here. They're not all put in here yet. So we will have, I am going to do that, get those assets in there, but we should have that intro section where it shows the little podcast symbol. This is his First Access Mortgage sponsor.
We are excited to be partnered with them, and for your.
So it doesn't have music to it, so you're going to have to add music to it. But we wanted to do that so that you can add individual musics to it. We also have a what is it called? We also have stingers. That's what they are. But they're not in here because I didn't do it. Let me do that.
For your first home, a vacation home, or an investment property.
Okay, before we get to the stingers, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and show our zooms. So I'm going to right click or double click in my case, create a new bin, and I like making a bin that says zoom. That way, and if you've seen me do any kind of work profile or whatever, you'll notice that I like creating zooms in a bin for zooms because it really just makes things go fast. Now I'm going to go ahead and click into my effects. I'm going to make some room over here. Take our audio down, and I want to make it look like we have a dual camera setup. So this was shot in 6K. So you do have more room to work with. Now it's rendered down to like 1080p or something like that. Really bad. It's going to look really bad on your end, but trust me, it'll look good in the end. So we're in our zooms file. Let's go to our effects. I'm going to type in adjustment, or start typing it in. Adjustment clip. And we're just going to place this anywhere because we're going to delete it later because we're going to save it as something else. So remember, whenever you create an adjustment layer, the length that you make it and save it is how long it's going to be. So not super
But
crucial
as
'cause
Americans,
you're gonna
and
have to
spoiled
adjust them all anyways.
daylights out of us
Right.
in the process.
Well, interesting that, with Amazon FBA, they basically create.
All right, so what I like to do is I like to get our host first. I'm just gonna click on it, zoom in, and we're gonna do a single shot. So our main footage is our wide, and we can just say wide. Or we'll just call it footage, who cares? I don't normally do that. I'm trying to come up with new things, man. I'm always trying to do these quick tutorials, but at the same time, I'm just explaining everything. All right, so we're going to try to get them in that thirds kind of area. Thirds here, thirds here. We could maybe scoot them back a little bit. I mean, heck, we could even zoom them in some more. There's a lot of empty wall on this side because they're kind of spread out a bit. Bring them down, bring them up a little bit. Computer is running a little slow. I think it needs an update, so it's not being 100% accurate. Okay, now that I have this set, all I have to do is grab it, drag it in here, and then I can, what I normally do is I come in here, I rename it as type Will. It stopped. Okay, so I just double click this. But I think you can right click it and it'll give you the same options. Let's see. Right click. You can change clip color. I don't think it actually like changes. So like I'll do orange. Let's see if it actually, no, it doesn't. I do like how it'll say Will. So like I'll bring it down here, even though I normally like color changes, but it does say Will. So that's always a good thing. So now that I have this zoomed in, I don't want to have a different zoom for our guest because I want it to feel, like symmetrical in that sense. So what I normally do is like, I'll click back on it and then I'm just going to reposition it. And I mainly want to first just reposition the x-axis just to get it over to them. And then in a lot of cases for women, because they're generally shorter than men, I'll adjust the y-axis a little bit. And it looks like he's kind of slunched over a bit, so I will adjust his, but it's but it's just going to be very minimal. And you want it to be very minimal because you don't want to have him way up here and then the other guest down here or whatever. You want it to feel kind of symmetrical, just so it's like very easy for someone to adjust subconsciously to it as they're watching the podcast. So now that we have this, we're going to go ahead and drag this back in, and we're going to call this one guest. That one's done. And so now we have 3 camera angles. So let's go ahead and bring Will's back, because one of the things I do as well for Will's intros and outros, like he looks at the camera like this. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this. I like to have Will in that camera on his own. So let's see. I want to make sure I'm seeing the full frame. I would normally want to have him in the center of the shot. And it looks like the zoom is already good. I may have to adjust him down just a little bit, but I'm going to try to get him in that center as much as possible. Kind of bring his eyes to that lower third area. And so this is a good zoom. And then if you need to do some readjustments to do a zoom in and zoom out, let's see, I'll do this. I'll type Will intro for these. Will intro outro. That way you just know. All right, so I can, when we come in here and we make these adjustments, and we're like, oh, we got to cut right here, and because you want it to be fast and snappy. The beginning is the one that you're adding the B-roll, you're adding the music, you're adding all the cuts. After that, it's very simple. And so, I can easily come in here if I have a cut and I want to adjust it, because you don't want to cut to a wide shot at this point. you're going to want it to keep like in the center on the intros for the most part. And then when he introduces the guest, that's when you start showing the guest and bring that wide shot in. And so we'll go ahead and give a little bit of an example around here.
Well, and you said something. One of my
Okay, so Will's talking. I'm going to drag this here.
is one of the things that
Let's bring this up so I can see it a little better. And this is essentially the process.
is clarity is power.
Yes.
And one of
Other than the fact that it's going really slow.
I've recognized about myself, and I think you've recognized about yourself in this, is that we're both like anti.
So he says, we're both. This is something that, like, psychologically, I'm really, really involved with, as far as like, you want to connect these dots when the viewer hears them say something. If they're watching the video, if he says we're both, then it can feel claustrophobic if you're not showing both of them. You have to consider yourself as if your head is the camera and you're in there watching the conversation. And so when somebody is talking on their own, your head is normally going to turn and hyper focus on the speaker. And then sometimes if they say something crazy, you're probably going to look over to the guest and be like, is that dude going to react to this? You know, like if he's like, I think you're a big stupid head, you're going to look over and see how the other guy reacts, because you're a human and you understand that people get emotional and they react certain ways. And so likewise, you want to consider that whenever you're filming something. And so when somebody is saying we both, you cut normally to a wide shot so that the viewer can connect those dots. So it's a visual and a sound thing mixing together to really get that subconscious, or I'm probably saying things wrong, but to get it connected properly so that it feels comfortable, it feels good, it feels right, because it feels natural.
People were like, oh yeah.
And then also, like, a good rule of thumb is like, you don't want to have a shot on there for too long. I mean, it really just depends on the moment, but for the most part, like, I would say 1 to 3 seconds, sometimes 5 on the occasion. In the beginning, you want to cut more. On the end, you want to cut more. But in the middle, you have a little bit more leeway to kind of just stretch out these. But
we're both like anti-clarity people. We're like, oh yeah, I'm sure it'll work out, and we'll just kind of do this, do that, and we were, and that's how we went into the partnership, which was like, I mean, it's amazing that it didn't end up.
It's probably because I'm recording this as well.
A complete disaster.
But yeah, so like he goes in there, and then all I have to do is just drop this. And if you're not recording stuff like me, then it would probably go a lot smoother. Oh my gosh. It's the end of this one. Okay. It's like worst case scenario. Why is that so wide? Do we have 2 on top of each other?
A complete disaster.
We do. That's why I said complete disaster.
Complete disaster.
Okay, so now Will has adjusted a little bit apparently, or my camera adjusted. So we're just going to take that and shift it. And if we notice that there's like a consistency in it, and a good way to check that, you can easily just stretch this out and be like, hey, let me scrub through this, because that's a pretty significant move. You don't want to be sloppy with this stuff. You need to pay attention to. You can just stretch that out and then scrub.
Like you've got Arnie no tail.
Yeah,
we end up in the track.
Save
just so
that zoom. So we can go in here and say, okay, yeah, it did readjust and it stayed that way. So I'm gonna shrink this back down to a decent size. And then I'm going to save this. I'm gonna save. Somebody save me. Okay. Let's save this as Will adjusted. It's essentially like, I'm not saying you have to say that. This is just me trying to say, hey, like, solve your problems ahead of time so you're not having to do all this grindy grunt work in the end and be like, oh, because I mean, think about it. If you were dropping these down and you're like, man, it's off, then you have to go and manually adjust each one that you do for that person, and it's just going to cause a lot of headache. So if I can go through and check this and then adjust it one time, I'm good. And then I'm not messing up any of these other ones as well, where he is in a good position. So, let's just say this guy's talking, and I wanted to show a little bit more.
But that experience was so eye-opening of like, no, lawyers just
I like to
navigate.
keep them on different levels
they're
as well, just so I know, like, hey, this is Will Zooms, and then this is Guest Zooms, just so it's easier to track. It's just my suggestion, not saying you have to do it. I even like to color them different, just so it's easy to recognize visually. I used to see
for their client typically. Right. I think this one was mutual.
Oop. Hit that blade.
It was mutually,
and he did.
So you can see how Will comes in there talking. I mean, that was a happy accident, but that's generally like what we want to do.
But that experience was so eye-opening of like, no, lawyers just help you navigate. They're there for their client typically. Right. I think this one was mutual.
It was mutually.
So notice, and this is how I would normally edit it too, is like if I notice he starts talking, I don't want to just cut right before he starts talking, because nobody naturally anticipates that unless it is something super visually important that we need to see. What is more natural is if I'm watching our guest and then Will starts talking, it's going to take me maybe 1 second to 2 seconds to look over and notice him, or half a second, whatever it is. And so you get that in the end of this.
I think this one was mutual.
It was mutually.
And you see how it adjusts over. So that is essentially like, that is the setup, and it is very, very simple. And then if you're playing through it and it cuts, then obviously you're going to want to go ahead and just cut those parts out, and you can utilize your zooms to make it look like it just changed cameras. I'm going to go ahead and add in the rest of our assets to this project, but essentially those are just as easy as anything else. Like our stinger transition is just something that you know what, I'm gonna get it and we'll put it on. Okay. I added the files in there. Let's see if they're actually in. Yay! Look at us go. Okay, so I wanted to show this just because it's really a nice little simple set. I will say, go look at Will's videos. You'll see. Let's go to a newer one. Let's go to a newer one. I know this is like a short.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Will Frederick Podcast, where we're talking about real estate, wealth building, money, and life. We have been talking about a lot of different types of creative financing, and today we're going to talk about one tool in particular that I've used a lot. It's called a bond for deed. First, I'd like to...
So, notice that little intro is kind of like the segue outside of the hook. So you have the hook, you have that little snap segue in there, and I'm not going to put it into the file, but I'm just going to show you. Let's see. Is it this one? Yes. Okay. So this has the sound effects. Let's see if we can play it from the beginning. Real simple. Doesn't need to have any transitions. It's just a cut into place kind of thing. So you do your editing for the hook, you add that in, and then it generally goes straight to sponsor.
Home or an investment.
That always has music, just like it has here.
Thank our title sponsor, First Access Mortgage. They're Louisiana's first choice mortgage lender for the last 21 years. We are excited to be partnered with them. And for your first home.
Okay, so you see they have music. There is a logo that we can add in as well, which I can add that into the project when the time comes. It's just something you would lay over, so not a big deal. And then we're going to go into the episode. So let's go ahead and look here.
Home, a vacation home, or an investment property, they're truly your home loan resource. I'm joined today by our special guest, Don.
All right. And I normally like to allow that music to linger and fade out.
Don Hingle. Don is the owner of Sovereign Title, and they've been in business for close to 30 years, right, Don?
1997,
right,
yes.
So you hear how that fades out, and I'm not going to lie, my freaking, like, it is bothering me that they're not completely symmetrical. But it's already done. It's already uploaded. There's no changing that. Oh, I can't. I'm not signed in. Okay. Not a lot of love on this episode. Granted, the topic is not the most exciting. Who wants to understand a bond for deed? Yeah. But good stuff. I'm not going to lie. He gives a lot of value. If you're ever into real estate, he is the guy to listen to. Very successful. Knows what he's talking about. Anyways, let's go back to our project. So that's how you kind of set up that beginning area. And then I want to show you how to cut in, and I'm definitely going to replace these. Let's see. The lack of space. I'm going to shrink this out. And we want to lift this up because we don't want our audio to cut in, because this does have audio. So we're going to lift this up enough to where it doesn't run into that. So we want to make sure we're on a track that doesn't cut into it. Let's go ahead and zoom in. So essentially we just kind of like,
I sold it to you for later. Seemed like not as good a deal, but
a good deal.
Yeah, it was still a good deal, but it was hard to see that.
And that's it. That's all it is. So what we do is, like, let's just say, hey, here goes a dead spot. We're going to add the sponsorship, which generally we want to add somewhere in the middle, but I'm just going to do it here for time's sake. So let's cut this on all its fronts. Where's the video? Cut this here. And then we're going to
in the moment
take it and separate it. Give us some space. Let's just say this is our sponsor. This is the title sponsor, so this one goes in the front. First Access Mortgage is always going to be the title sponsor that we have currently, so you want to make sure that you have that in there. So we're going to take this and we're going to, first we're going to see if we can bring it down a little bit. Goodness gracious. All right, I'm going to unlink this because it is bothering me when we don't have that much room. I don't want to be able to see all of our tracks. And now I'll relink it just so it doesn't get unconnected. So what I normally do for this is we go into our effects. Oh, we already had our effects. Let's take media pool out, effects, and let's clear this out. We're going to go to video transitions, and I always use the foreground wipe. So use that to start and to stop. Boom, boom. And you will need to make some adjustments to the length of this because normally it's too long. You don't want it to be that much.
It seemed like not as good a deal, but
a good deal.
Okay, so we don't want it to start that early.
Good a deal, but
a good deal.
As soon as the podcast thing pops up, we start adding in the audio, and then we can shrink this out to be roughly, like, you obviously don't want it to start transitioning before the video is because then you'll see it kind of like pop up, and that is super unprofessional. So we'll bring it back just a little bit. We'll see how long the timing of this transition is. Just 1 second.
First, I'd like to thank our title sponsor.
Okay. I think that can work. And then we're just going to add in some music, man. Now, I just have some examples in here. You can go to the site that we use music for. You just want to hit the vibe, so I don't think that one hits. I don't think that one does either. So this I think this might be able to work. And it really just depends on the video. So, like, one thing that I like to do is I like to segue into the music first to kind of bring it in. And then let's say, like, hey, that transition really hits right there. I'm going to take this and kind of, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to grab this. And we are going to turn this down. And we're going to do the same thing that we always do with our music on this, where we cut that, those highs and lows down. Oh, space. And a trackpad. Good times. All right, so we're going to do this and do this. Just real simple. Very, very simple. You're at the 250 on the 2 and then 4,000 on that one. You always want to make sure you don't leave it on that, because then that's going to cut out all these lows and it doesn't allow it to still sound powerful. We're just we're cutting out the main points of a person's voice, where it's like those lower mid areas and those higher mid areas, to bring clarity and volume to their voice to really sound good. So
first, I'd like to thank our title sponsor, First Access Mortgage. They're Louisiana's first choice mortgage lender for the last 21 years. We are excited to be partnered with them. And for your first home, a vacation home, or an investment property, they're truly your home loan resource.
Audio. Okay, so it stops right there. And then all you have to do from that point is do this over here, restart the podcast, and then have that music transition out again. And that's it. That's how you do this. Congratulations. You know how to do it. I'm proud of you. Keep up the great work.